Hello, good morning, and welcome to Unacademy IAS, a one stop destination for all the English medium civil services aspirants. This is Shyam Kaggod here, having the discussion of the Hindu news dated 20th May 2025. Out of the daily edition, I've taken a total of 11 articles, a lot of them relevant for only prelims, some of them relevant for both prelims as well as mains. We will have a comprehensive discussion covering all the aspects that you need to understand to ace the civil services examination. If you like this initiative, do not forget to hit the like button. And if you yet to subscribe to our YouTube channel, kindly do it right now. Before I start, please do let me know in the chat section that I'm audible and visible for all of you. Please do let me know. Am I audible and visible for all of you? Yes. Let's start then. So, the PPT that I'm using will be uploaded in my Telegram channel after the session is over. This is the link for the Telegram channel. Please scan and join and get the PPT. Second thing is, those who are appearing for Civil Services Examination 2026, which I believe most of you are appearing, there will be a session conducted by Sarmad Sir on 21st May at 7 p.m. Sir will be giving you guidance regarding the prelims, mains, as well as the interview, how to prepare, what approach you should have starting from today itself. So please do join. The link for enrollment into the class will be provided in the description. Click on this, enroll, join the session on 21st May at 7 p.m. Now, let me start the discussion. The first very important article, a very big article given in a full page, ongoing all price tensions. Although the article is so large, given in the full page, what are the important points that you need to understand from the civil services perspective? Let's understand. Point number one, the crude oil is a very important raw material. It is needed for conducting multiple economic activities, not only in India, but also in the rest of the world. The crude oil prices are not stable. Very often, because of multiple factors, you will see the crude oil prices fluctuating a lot. If you just observe the graph which is given in the newspaper itself, you will see the crude oil price peaking at certain point of time, then dropping or crashing, and then again becoming volatile, moving every now and then. There are multiple global factors which will influence the crude oil prices. And what is the connection of the prices to the Indian market, we'll understand at the end of the discussion of the article. So in recent times, that is, let's say during pandemic, because there was very less demand for the crude oil prices, the crude oil, because there was a very less demand for the crude oil, because of the lockdowns imposed by the respective governments around the world, the crude oil prices during pandemic crashed. And after the pandemic got over, after the recovery started, you are seeing there is a rise in the crude oil prices. At one point of time, it even crossed $110 per barrel, $115 per barrel. And now, because of various factors, the crude oil prices have again started decreasing. Now, why should you understand all of this? Listen to me carefully. There is a group of countries by the name of OPEC Plus. A group of countries by the name of OPEC Plus. You can call this as a group of countries, or else it is a cartel. It is a cartel having 23 countries, 13 from the OPEC. OPEC simply stands for Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. Petroleum exporting countries. So under the OPEC, there are 13 member countries. And in OPEC Plus, there are totally 23 member countries. Now, very recently, for the month of June, the cartel has decided they are going to increase the production. The cartel has announced they will be increasing the production by every day 4.1 lakh barrels. On day-to-day basis, they will be producing 4.1 lakh more barrels of crude oil. And this is not the first time. In the last 3 months, the announcement has been done in order to increase the production by OPEC plus. The total amount of increase, if you take the last 3 months, including this announcement, now the overall production will increase by 9.6 lakh barrels. What is being done by OPEC? Why this announcement is being done? What is the logic behind it? And how this is connected to India? Let's understand all these points one by one, which will basically be summarizing the article that is provided here. If you look at the OPEC group of countries, the major producer in the OPEC group of countries is Saudi Arabia. It is Saudi Arabia. This is one of the major producer. It accounts for large chunk of production within the OPEC, supply within the OPEC, and it also generates a huge amount of revenue by selling or exporting crude oil to the international market. Saudi Arabia, as a producer and a supplier, generally prefers a stable prices for the crude oil. It prefers stable prices of the crude oil. Reason being, if the prices are stable, they'll be able to generate stable revenues. And because they generate huge amount of revenues which they use in, let's say, the expenditure within the country, they always prefer a stable amount of or the stable prices of the crude oil. If the prices go up, they are happy because they'll be able to generate more amount of money, revenue by selling the crude oil. If the prices go down, they will not prefer this. And in recent times, mind you, in recent times, what has happened to the prices of the crude oil? In recent times, the prices of the crude oil have started softening. The crude oil prices have started, right, let's say moderating. Now, understand the logic here. If the prices are already moderating, that is, the prices are already much lower. Let's say a couple of years ago, the prices were more than $100 per barrel. Now these are around $60 to $70 per barrel. Obviously, compared to the earlier time period, the amount of revenue that Saudi Arabia, or for that matter, OPEC will generate by selling the crude oil is lower. So now the question arises, when the prices have already softened, when the prices are lower compared to what these were a couple of years ago, why is that OPEC Plus has announced an increase in the production and supply of the crude oil? Because if you apply basic economics, if the crude oil production increases, supply also increases. And when the supply increases, the market prices automatically will start going down. Don't you think the announcement that has been done by the OPEC Plus is basically affecting the incomes or the revenues generated by OPEC Plus itself? So the question arises, what is the logic behind it? Why is that despite having lesser crude oil prices right now compared to earlier time period, OPEC Plus has announced a increased oil production in the month of June. And it is not just expected for the month of June. Understand this. By the end of October 2025, it is expected that the OPEC Plus will continue to increase the output, which will further push down the global crude oil prices. So the logic behind the announcement, why the announcement has been done, understand this. The logic behind the announcement is that Saudi Arabia, like I said, prefers a stable crude oil prices. But within the OPEC plus countries, there are certain countries which are overproducing, and supplying it in the market. When one country, or let's say some countries within the group, have put cuts on the production, have basically restricted their production, some other countries are producing more, supplying more. So don't you think these countries which are cutting production will not be happy with the performance of other countries which are overproducing? And that is the precise reason generally Saudi Arabia follows a policy. It follows a policy. Whenever it sees that some other countries within the group or outside the group also, they basically are supplying more and more of the crude oil. When Saudi Arabia is cutting the crude oil production, what Saudi Arabia does is it will simply flood the market. It will simply flood the market. What is the logic behind this? Point number one, understand this. Saudi Arabia has huge amount of oil reserves. Not just oil reserves, it also has huge amount of money as well. That is, they will use the term, it comes with a deep pocket. It comes with a deep pocket, which means they have a lot of money. Now, if Saudi Arabia sees within the OPEC plus, some of the countries are not sticking to the production cuts, or some other countries are not cutting the production, they are supplying more at the cost of Saudi Arabia, they are generating more revenue. What does Saudi Arabia do? It will simply overproduce the oil, supply more and more crude oil in the market. And when they produce more and supply more in the market prices suddenly will crash. I hope you understand. The market prices suddenly will crash. And I know a lot of you might be thinking, sir, if the prices crash, don't you think it will affect the OPEC group of countries, including Saudi Arabia? Yes. But like I said, remember the point. They have lot of money. Even if the prices crash, they'll be able to counter that in the coming days. They will be able to manage that in the coming days, but not the other countries. I'll just give you one example. In 1985 and 86, this was the policy that was followed by Saudi Arabia. They saw that many countries are right basically increasing the supply and they are generating more revenues. Saudi Arabia has cut down the production, it is containing the production, etc. What Saudi Arabia did was they increased the production, flooded the market. And mind you, you're talking about 85 and 86. At that point of time, before this action was taken, the crude oil was trading at around $27 per barrel. And you know what happened after there was a flooding of crude oil in the market? The crude oil prices crashed from $27 to $10. So imagine those particular suppliers who are smaller countries who do not have sufficient revenues or resources, they'll be affected very greatly because of the crude oil prices crashing. But richer countries, or let's say those countries with huge pockets or deep pockets such as Saudi, they will not be affected by all of this. But essentially, what is the outcome? Now, because of this kind of a threat, other countries will fall in line. They will try to take the cues from the OPEC or from the leader, and they will also try to control the production. This is the first reason why the announcement has been done. Second reason, the article simply says is, in recent times, what has happened is many number of producers have come into the market. For example, USA. USA has been one of the producers of the crude, no doubt. But the current administration of the USA, you must have heard of the slogan that was used by the current president of USA, drill, baby, drill. Right? So basically, the current president wants USA to produce more and more crude oil, right? So that the import dependence will go down. So the argument of the OPEC now is there are many producers who have come into the system, and I want to ensure that I am a stable supplier, I am a global leader, I am supplying at a lower crude oil price. I am supplying this crude at lower prices. What I can do to ensure all of this is increase production, supply more, and the prices will come down. Many countries around the world who want to import it will prefer me. So that is the second reason. Third reason, again USA. Third reason is again USA. Very recently, Mr. Donald Trump visited this particular region. And during this particular meeting, or let's say visit, multiple billions worth of agreements have been signed between USA and the grouping of countries or respective trading partners. One of the reason is said to be because the reduction of the crude oil prices will have a positive impact on the USA economy. How so? USA imports crude oil, and if the crude oil prices are very higher in the international market, it will have a direct impact on the consumers in USA. That is, the inflation in USA market would be higher. Now, by increasing supply, by announcing a supply increase, the market prices of crude oil have already softened, have gone down, although they have recovered later. But with the announcement, the crude oil prices are expected to become softer. And this is expected to provide benefit to USA by reducing the crude oil prices and by reducing the impact of the crude oil prices on the inflation in the USA. So these are some of the reasons as to why the announcement has been done in recent times. But will it be effective? Although the announcement has been done to, right, let's say increase the production and supply, will it be as effective as it was used earlier? The article simply says the impact of the announcement may not be very, very high compared to what was the impact earlier. Why so? Like I said, compared to earlier situation, for example, USA is planning to invest more, drill more oil, supply more oil, so that within the domestic market, the import dependence will go down. There are many other suppliers such as Venezuela or for that matter Russia. Right now, sanctions have been imposed by USA on these suppliers. But if you're reading the news or seeing the news, you will know that there is a talk of a truce between, right, let's say Russia and Ukraine, which is mediated by USA. A statement regarding that has been given by the president of USA yesterday itself. So if there is a truce, if there is a stop put to these, right, let's say the events that are taking place, automatically the sanctions would be lifted. And if the sanctions are lifted, more players will jump into the market now. For example, Russia will jump into the market, increase the supply to many other countries which are not purchasing right now because of the sanctions from Russia. So the argument of the article is simply, will it be effective as it was effective earlier? It may not be that much effective. Now, finally coming to the point of discussion, what is the impact on India? All of this, how it will have an impact on India, that is more relevant for you as well. The impact on India will be multiple folds. First one, listen to me carefully. India is one of the largest importer of crude. One of the largest importer of crude. How much? Generally, around 85% of the crude oil that is required in the domestic market, we import it. Now, if the crude oil prices in the international market go down, it will have a positive impact on India's imports. What do you mean by positive impact? The imports will become cheaper. And listen to me carefully. According to the article, the data which is provided here, if the crude oil prices reduce by $1 per barrel, if the crude oil prices reduce by $1 per barrel, it is going to reduce the overall outflow of the forex from India to the extent of $1.5 billion. That is $1.5 billion lesser amount of money shall be paid because of lower crude oil prices. The outflow of forex reserves, impact on inflation, impact on inflation. There is a term called as imported inflation. For example, let's say the imports become costlier, automatically the higher prices of the imports will be translated into higher market prices. If the crude oil price is higher, petrol price will be higher, diesel prices will be higher, transportation cost will increase, and that will increase the market prices of the commodities. So the impact on inflation in the domestic market will also become benign. That is, the impact will become lesser. We can effectively control the imported inflation, assuming this is the only factor, that is the crude oil prices having an impact. Third one, what about remittances? This is where there are certain concerns. Listen to me carefully. What about remittances? India is the topmost inward remitter in the global market. Remember this. According to the World Bank, according to the Reserve Bank of India, India has received remittances more than $120 billion. The first ranked or the topmost inward remitter. A large chunk of these remittances essentially come from the population which has migrated for work purposes from India to Middle East. And because this population has migrated from India to Middle East, and these people are working in the Middle East countries, if the revenues of these Middle Eastern countries go down, and because these generate a majority of their revenues by exporting oil, if their revenues will go down, earnings of India's migrant population will go down. And if these earnings will go down, remittances coming into India are also likely to go down. Is everybody able to understand? Are likely to go down. So first two I've given you impact which is a positive. Next three impact which is a concern, negative. So this is the third one. Fourth one. What about exports? What about exports? Listen to me carefully. India not only imports crude oil, it refines the crude oil. Refines means it will purify the crude oil. We'll see there are multiple components which we will take out from the crude oil, and some of these we export. Some of these we simply export, and these are essentially called as petroleum oil lubricants, POL, petroleum oil lubricants. These form one of the major exports from the India's market to the external market. If the crude oil prices will go down, automatically the POL value that we get will also go down. So some of the, right, let's say exporters would be affected because of the lower crude oil prices negatively in this way. What about the fifth impact? The tax receipts of the government. The tax receipts of the government. Generally, you will see that the government's tax receipts, again assuming government will not change the tax rates, etc. Many of the governments, for example, state governments, impose a tax on the value of the product. The same is applicable even to petrol, diesel, etc. So if the crude oil prices go down, the petrol and diesel prices will also go down. Assuming nothing else will change, the tax rates will remain same, the government's tax receipts automatically will also start going downward. So these are the negative impacts of the lower crude oil prices in the international market. So I've given you a comprehensive discussion here from starting point, that is what is the requirement of a crude oil, to why the crude oil prices might go down further in the coming days. What is the logic behind that? Will it be as effective as it was earlier? And finally, what is the positive and negative impact of lower crude oil prices on the Indian market? So these are certain things. Please make a note of this. Associated with this discussion, there is an MCQ. Which of the following are likely outcomes of falling crude oil prices in the global market? Right? Of course, I'm talking about likely impact on India. There is a Latin word that I've used, ceteris paribus. What do you mean by ceteris paribus? It's a Latin word which simply means all the other factors remain same. I repeat, it's a Latin word which means all the other factors remain same, unchanged or constant. Okay? The inflow of remittances in India would reduce. Exports would remain unaffected. The amount of tax collected by the government would reduce. How many of them are correct? Do let me know. I'll give you the key answer at the end of the discussion. Let me go forward. Next article, micro picture at Panchayat level. Getting the micro picture at the Panchayat level. A very good article which is required, which you need to understand. I'm expecting a question associated with this in the mains examination. Again, not just this article, but the idea of a statistics, the concept of data collection. You can expect a question on this in the mains examination. What are the important points? Point number one, whenever certain data is published in India, you need the data which is the recent data, most recent data. The problem in case of India is there are multiple indicators which are published for which the data that is collected or the base year that is used is not a recent one. I'll give you an example here. All of you heard of the consumer price index, inflation index. All of you heard of the wholesale price index, one more type of a inflation index. You must have heard of GDP, growth rate calculation, etc. What are the base years for these? The base years are very, very old. For CPI, we have a base year of 2012. For GDP, we have a base year of 2011 and 2012. For WPI, we have a base year of 2011 and 2012, which means we are collecting data, but the results which are published are using certain parameters, certain base indicators which are very, very old. We need to change that. There is a second issue as well. You want to make certain policies, but for the policy making and the effective implementation of the policy, you need the most recent data. For example, I'm pretty sure all of you heard of the policy of the government or the law which has been passed by the government, which will provide 30% 33%, one third reservation of the seats for women in the parliament. But for that to be implemented, you need census data. That is essentially you need delimitation exercise. And for the delimitation exercise to be conducted, you need census data. So I hope you understand the logic here. One of the issues that we are facing in case of India for efficient policy making, effective policy making, is the absence of the most recent data. I'll give you counterpoints also, just have patience. Second issue is, even if the data is collected and published, it is a macro picture. It is a representation of a macro data. What is the meaning of it? Let me give you an example. Imagine you collect data regarding how many members are working in households, how much is the income collected. Now, if I collect the data for different villages and basically cumulate the data and publish the results for a state, understand this. I will publish the results for a particular state. Now tell me, whatever is the result for a state, does it provide you the detailed information regarding what is the income level for a respective village here? Is that number giving you information regarding what is the income level for, right, let's say village number 3? Answer is no. Why? We are publishing the data, right, for a state, not for individual villages. But don't you think, if you want to make effective policies, if you want to make policies which will lead to better outcomes, we should have micro data rather than macro data. Correct? We should have micro data rather than macro data. I'll just give you one more example to make you understand the importance of this. All of you heard of the GDP of India? Just let me know. GDP. What is India's GDP? Once in every quarter, they will calculate and publish it. This GDP number will simply tell you what is the overall picture of India. It will tell you what is the market price of all the goods and services, final goods and services which are produced in India. But now tell me, will the GDP data tell you how much is the income generated by villages in India? How much is the income generated by, right, let's say, gram panchayats in India? How much is the GDP or how much is the income generated by districts in India? That kind of a micro information is not provided by the overall GDP number. But for efficient policy making, effective policy making, you require this kind of a data. That is actually required. And so this is the second very important problem. And the third important problem, which the writer simply says, because we do not have recent data, because we do not have micro data, micro means at the lowest level, individual unit level, because we do not have these kind of data sets, the policy making is faulty in India. A lot of times the policies are determined based on the thinking of a bureaucrat or the intuition of a bureaucrat or a minister, because they will look at the macro data and announce a policy, announce implementation of multiple measures. So these are the three criticisms that have been levied against the policy making in India by the writer in the article. But let me give you counterpoints before I go forward. Let me give you certain counterpoints here. What are the counterpoints? Yes, it is true that for a lot of these calculations, the base year that we are using is a very old base year. But having said so, it's not that the government of India is not doing anything to update the data. For example, the government of India has set up committees to revise the base years. Correct? They have set up committees to revise base years. For example, CPI base year is expected to be revised. WPI base year is expected to be revised. GDP growth base year is expected to be revised. That is the first important point. And multiple surveys have been conducted already to conduct this kind of a exercise. For example, last year there was a discussion regarding a survey that was conducted Household Consumption Expenditure Survey. And HCES is generally conducted, the data is used for updation of various indices. So government is taking certain reforms. This is point number one. Point number two, Government of India argues, why do you always say there is no sufficient data available for public? Why do you say that? Reason being, there are multiple reports which are published annually by various authorities, such as individual ministries will publish reports. If you're wondering, sir, what kind of reports? Every ministry under the Government of India publishes annual review. They will provide you details of what they are doing, how much expenditure they are incurring, where they are investing, what is the infrastructure they are developing, etc. You will also see Niti Aayog also publishing various reports and providing, right, let's say data to the public. If you want to get access, go to Niti Aayog website, you will get the data. And not just this, based on the policy that was announced by the government back in the year 2012, based on the policy, I repeat, based on the policy that was announced by the government back in the year 2012, the Government of India set up a portal. It has set up a portal where you can get access to various data sets. Any common man, anybody and everybody can get access to the data published by Government of India. But having said so, the criticism associated with this, I'm focused on the third point. The criticism associated with this is, yes, government is publishing the data, but there is a too much of dumping of data. What do you mean by dumping? If you download a report which is published by, let's say, a respective ministry, if you go to this particular website or download a report, for a common man, it is very difficult to understand what is the information given in the report, what is relevant, what is not relevant, how do you extract the information from the report, etc. So, lot of data will be simply dumped by the government, which cannot be used by, let's say, many of the experts, which cannot be understood by a common man. So, what is the solution then? What is the solution? Solution is simple. The writer focuses on one index. Listen to me carefully. The writer is discussing one index, PAI. What is the PAI? PAI simply stands for Panchayat Advancement Index. Panchayat Advancement Index. Now, what is the PAI in the first place? It's an index which has been published very, very recently. There was a report that was published in April 2025. In April 2025, a report was published by the government. And in this particular report, more than 2 lakh panchayats in India, more than 2 lakh panchayats in India, that is Gram Panchayats, they have been evaluated, and based on their performance under multiple indicators, they have been categorized. And that index that has been used to categorize these panchayats is called as Panchayat Advancement Index. It is a composite index. Meaning of composite is multiple indicators are used to form an index number, to arrive at a number. I'll give you a couple of examples to make you understand. All of you heard of, please do let me know, the concept of, right, let's say the Human Development Index. Do let me know. Very recently, this was discussed in the CNA by multiple faculties. The Multi-Dimensional Poverty Index, MPI, Multi-Dimensional Poverty Index. So when you look at these kind of indices, the numbers which are provided is not based on one indicator. You take multiple indicators and then publish a number. For example, in HDI, there are mainly 3 indicators. In MPI, which is published by United Nations, there are 10 indicators. The MPI, which is published by Niti Aayog in India, makes use of 12 indicators. So, whenever you use multiple indicators like this is called as a composite index. In the same way, Panchayat Advancement Index is a composite index. It uses, according to the report published by the government, it uses 435 indicators. 435 indicators. And basically, these indicators are used along with the performance of these panchayats under 9 areas, 9 localized the sustainable development goals. The list is given here. You can have a look at it. But again, do not memorize it. You will not be able to remember, because I hope you understand. Sustainable development goals is basically the goals which are set up by United Nations, which we want to achieve by 2030. There are totally 17. Out of that, 9 which are applicable to the panchayats have been taken, localized SDGs, and in these, how the panchayats are performing is the focus. It is the focus here. Okay. So based on the PI scores and thematic scores, the panchayats have been divided into 5 categories. The panchayats have been divided into 5 categories based on the performance of the panchayats. So this is essentially the Panchayat Advancement Index that the writer is talking about. Now, what is the use of this? Yes, you have published a Panchayat Advancement Index, but what is the use of it? The use, the writer simply says, we can use these index numbers to find out how the panchayats are doing in multiple indicators. For example, whether the panchayat, right, is it a healthy panchayat? Whether the panchayat has a cleanliness, whether the panchayat has a sufficient, right, infrastructure. These kind of report cards can easily be taken not only by the policy makers but also the implementing authorities. And that is the precise reason the writer simply says, why don't we use this kind of a concept not only at the panchayat level but also at, let's say, the municipality level, at the district level, so that we know in what areas the panchayat is lagging behind, which panchayat is lagging behind, what kind of reforms should be implemented, what kind of policy should be implemented, etc. For example, there is an initiative MP LARD scheme, MP Local Area Development. There is an initiative Jal Jeevan Mission. There is an initiative Housing, right? That is Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana. Can we use the scores, or let's say the performance of the different panchayats, to find out which panchayat is lagging behind in which indicator, which kind of an initiative should be implemented in the panchayat? So this kind of a micro level data, I hope you understand the point now. This kind of a micro level data shall be useful not only for the policy making but also efficient implementation of the policy. Everybody is able to understand? So that is the essence of the article which has been provided here. Now, based on this, I've given an MCQ, also a descriptive question. Which of the following are examples of composite index? Panchayat Advancement Index, Human Development Index, Literacy Rate. This will be easier for you. I've also given an assignment for you to practice mains answer writing. And I hope, because a lot of you I know will be preparing for the CSE 2026. I'm pretty sure you know what is the date for the exams for the next year. UPSC has already planned for it. It has given you the date. Date for preliminary examination, date for mains examination as well. So what you need to do now is plan accordingly. Don't simply say we will do it when I'll reach January 1st, 2026. That will be too late. From today onwards, start practicing, right, for different subjects, the MCQs, the descriptive answer writing, etc. And so this is a question for you to practice descriptive answer writing. There is a need of reliable and disaggregated data for evidence-based policy making at the lowest level of government to ensure inclusive governance, effective service delivery, and targeted welfare schemes. Elaborate the statement in 250 words, a 15-marker question. And this kind of a question is asked, you can give an example of an indicator such as Panchayat Advancement Index. Give these kind of examples, which basically will prove the point that yes, there is a need for disaggregated data. Disaggregated means rather than looking at the total, you're looking at the components of the total. Macro versus micro. Okay, now let me go forward. British academic to contest cancellation of OCI registration. Right, there are two articles here. One is associated with the OCI portal and the second one associated with cancellation of OCI. What is OCI? OCI simply stands for Overseas Citizen of India. There are certain people who are not the citizens of India right now. They are residing outside India. But if they meet certain conditions such as their parents or grandparents are citizens of India, or right, these people were born in India for right up to certain date or after certain date, etc. There are conditions which have been prescribed. If you meet this particular condition, you can apply for a card which is called as a overseas citizen of India card. The scheme is called as overseas citizen of India scheme. The government of India back in the year 2005 amended the Citizenship Act of 1955 and introduced this particular scheme. And what is the use of the scheme? Under this, a overseas citizen, that is a non-resident of India, shall apply for this. They shall be issued this card and they can basically visit India without having to get visas. No time period required. They can simply come into India. Multiple entries would be allowed. You can enter into India. You can even work in India. Again, there are certain conditions. For example, can an overseas citizen of India or card holder, can they become a government bureaucrat? The government will not allow that. Right? Can they contest elections? Not allowed. Can they vote in the elections? Not allowed. But essentially, entry will be made much more easier. Staying will be made much more easier. Working in India for, let's say, private sector companies will be made much more easier by having overseas citizen of India card. And not just this, even in terms of investments, lot of relaxation is provided for the OCI card holder. For example, can they invest in assets in India? Again, there are certain exemptions, there are certain restriction, rather than exemption, restriction. For example, land holding is not allowed, other investments, other asset holding allowed. Can they invest in bank accounts in India? Yes. So lot of right benefits are provided for the card holders that is under OC. But having said so, please listen to me carefully. Now, let's connect it to current affairs. Under the Citizenship Act 1955, under this Citizenship Act, under Section 7D, there are also certain, right, let's say, conditions which are provided. The conditions under which there can be cancellation of OCI. It prescribes or it basically provides for the grounds on which OCI can be cancelled. For example, you are involved in anti-India behavior. You are involved in certain activities which will have an impact on sovereignty of India. So under certain grounds, the OCI can be cancelled. The government of India, in this case, has cancelled the OCI registration of an individual, a scholar, academician. And this scholar now says, I will contest this in the court. I'll contest the cancellation in the judiciary. And so that is the essence of the article. But please listen to me carefully. This is not the first time that the government of India has cancelled a OCI registration of an individual. Between 2014 to 2023, for which the data is available, the government of India so far has cancelled OCI registration of more than 100 people. More than 100 people, 100 individuals. Citing different reasons, most of the time the reason is essentially anti-India activities, as it has been cited in this particular case as well. But whenever the government cancels OCI registration, first they will have to send a notice to the person, ask clarification, and then they can order the cancellation, which the article clarifies government of India has done in this case. Right? But overall, I hope you understand the other aspect as well. This is generally associated with, let's say, government of India using these kind of policies to basically nullify or counter the anti-India activities, or right, freedom of speech, freedom of expression, etc. Right? That is national security versus freedom of speech, right, or dissent for that matter. So these are certain points associated with the first article. Second article, very easier one. The government of India now has announced, that is basically the Home Minister has announced, the OCI portal has been revamped, restructured. If a foreign individual wants to apply for an OCI, if they want to get an OCI card now, it has been made much more easier, because over a period of time, mind you, this portal which has been set up is a very old portal, more than a decade old. The government simply says on day-to-day basis, there are more than 2,000 applications that were received on the portal. So to make the process of applying for OCI simpler, to make, right, let's say the portal much more streamlined, to ensure people will be able to get access to different types of services provided by the government through the portal for OCI has been revamped. Right, so these are the two things. Associated with this, I've given one more MCQ. Right, so consider the following statements regarding overseas citizenship of India scheme. This was introduced by amending the Citizenship Act of 1955. There are no sections under the Act to cancel OCI issued. These cardholders have the right to vote in India. How many of these three statements are correct? Do let me know in the chat section. Otherwise, hold on to, right? Let's say hold on to the discussion. Wait for the discussion. I will give you the answer after certain time. Next article. E0 FIR initiative has been launched. E0 FIR initiative. What is the initiative? Let me explain this. Very recently, there has been a lot of discussion associated with digital scams. Correct? There has been a lot of discussion. At one point of time, when the Prime Minister in Man Ki Baat warned the citizens regarding the digital arrest. Said there is nothing called as a digital arrest in India. People are being scammed. People are being cheated out of their hard-earned money. So be aware of all of these issues that you might face. But in addition to the discussion, earlier itself, the Ministry of Home Affairs had set up a portal. Remember this. The Ministry of Home Affairs had set up an initiative, I4C. What is the full form of I4C? I4C simply stands for Indian Cyber Crime Coordination Center. Indian Cyber Crime Coordination Center. This is basically the full form of I4C. I4C has been set up under the Ministry of Home Affairs. And this I4C has set up a system. Right? That is a NCRP system. NCRP stands for National Crime Reporting Portal. Right? National Crime Reporting Portal. Now, what is the use of all of this? Listen to me carefully. According to the guidelines which have been issued by the Government of India, specifically the MHA here, if you are facing any cyber crimes, let's say a cyber crime wherein, right, somebody is taking the money out of your account. By mistake, you gave your OTP to somebody, you are fooled, right? Whatever the situation might be, the money is being withdrawn from your account, transferred from your account to somebody else's account. So you can go to this particular website, file a complaint. Or else, there is a national helpline, 1930. Remember this number, right? 1930, there is a national helpline. You can call up on this particular helpline and file, right, basically a complaint. Raise this particular issue. And if you're wondering what is the use of this, whenever the funds are transferred illegally like this, the funds, if they're falling into one more account, right, now these particular funds will be frozen and the amount will be credited back to your account. In all the cases, it cannot be done because I hope you understand. The criminals would have transferred funds from one account to another account multiple times. They would have transferred and withdrawn in some other remote area. In such cases, very difficult. But anyways, according to the data provided in the website, certain amount of money has been frozen and credited back into the origin account. But more importantly, now the Ministry of Home Affairs says there will be an initiative called as a E0 FIR. What is the concept of a E0 FIR? In this context, it's a pilot project which will be launched in Delhi as of now, and which will focus on those transactions where the value of money lost is about 10 lakh rupees. Where the value of money lost, that is cheated or withdrawn without the consent of the account holder, where the value of the transaction is at least 10 lakh rupees. And what will happen in this case? If you file a complaint in this portal, automatically this will be converted into E0 FIR. Everybody is able to understand? Automatically, this complaint that you file with the portal, this will be converted into FIR now, first information report. And the police, the concerned department in the police, now will start investigation once the FIR is filed. And what is the use of this? Without having to wait, without taking lot of time, now the investigation shall be conducted much faster, because automatically the complaint once you file in the portal will be converted into E0 FIR. Right? That is essentially the new initiative that has been launched by the Ministry of Home Affairs in the context of online frauds or the right digital scams. The Minister of Home Affairs has clarified that this will basically speed up the process of investigation. Lot of criminals would be caught in the coming days because of this initiative itself. And right now, it's a pilot project only in Delhi, only for transactions about 10 lakh. Later on, it shall be expanded to all the cities. Okay. Lalita Prasad Yadav says a police station can't do anything. My dear, please understand. Uh, there have been instances where police have not been in a position to do anything, but at the same point of time, there have been instances where police action has helped to recover the money. There are instances. Okay, let's go forward. But your argument should not be, what is the use? Let's not implement anything in that case. That should not be your argument. Your argument is, right, sir, how can we improve the system? What more can we do to improve, right, the system? Right? That should be your argument. That should be your answer in the mains examination as well as in the inter. Okay, let me go forward. Veeraswami Judgement. The judgment has been quoted by the Vice President. In one of the speeches that was given by the Vice President yesterday, couple of things were mentioned. Again, out of all the things, or in addition to all the things earlier mentioned by the Vice President, one more issue now. What is the issue? The Vice President simply says there is a judgment of Supreme Court of India that needs to be reviewed very fast. We need an urgent review of this particular judgment. And that judgment which was quoted is the Veeraswamy Judgement of 1991. Right? Veeraswamy Judgement of 1991. What is the importance of this judgment? How is it connected to the current affairs? Let me give you an explanation here. Very recently, all of these things have been discussed in the CNA earlier as well. That is news analysis earlier as well. Very recently, an incident has come to light. That is, in the house of a High Court judge, large amount of money was found, although burnt. And later, this High Court judge was transferred into another High Court, and there was a huge opposition. Supreme Court of India said there is an internal investigation that is happening. We will take notice of the outcomes of the internal investigation. Action shall be taken. This is essentially the summation of what has been happening in the last 2.5 months. But against this initiative, or against this step taken by the Supreme Court, there are also many other voices which criticized the Supreme Court and said, why no FIR has been filed so far? Why no action, criminal action has been taken against this High Court judge so far? Why simply transfer from one High Court to another High Court? It is not going to serve any purpose. The person will still continue to remain as a High Court judge. Right? So there were certain criticisms. In addition to this, now the Vice President says there is a need to urgently review. There is a need to urgently review the Veeraswamy judgment. What is the importance of the judgment? Please listen to me carefully. Mr. Veeraswamy was a Chief Justice of a High Court. There was investigation conducted, and after he retired, there was a case filed against this Chief Justice. And the allegation was disproportionate assets have been accumulated. In simple terms, involved in corruption. The case went to Supreme Court of India. The Supreme Court of India gave a judgment which is famously called as Veeraswamy Judgement. In this judgment, the Supreme Court of India made certain observations. What are the important points? Point number one, under the Prevention of Corruption Act, PCA, it basically covers the public servants. The PCA covers public servants. Is a judge of a court a public servant? Supreme Court said yes. Judge of a court is a public servant. Hence, automatically, they would be covered under the Prevention of Corruption Act. But please understand, the Supreme Court at the same point of time also issued, right, one more addition to the order, or there was one more important point. What was the other important point? Want to start investigation against a High Court judge? You want to file an FIR against the High Court judge? You want to take cognizance of, right, let's say activities are done by the justice under the Prevention of Corruption Act, etc. In such cases, you need prior sanction. Is the point clear to you? You need prior sanction. You need the prior approval. And in such cases, finally, the authority, the authority which will have the higher power will be a CJI, Chief Justice of India. That is essentially the outcome of the Veeraswami judgment, which essentially now would mean if you want to file an FIR against a High Court judge, you need a prior approval, you need a prior sanction. Right? And that is the precise reason in recent case that was observed, the FIR so far has not been filed. And that is the argument which has been put forward by the Vice President. The Vice President simply says, right, why not file an FIR? We are not able to file an FIR because there is a judgment related to this. Hence, there is a need to urgently review the Veeraswamy judgment. And so, this is the update associated with what is happening in the judiciary. Let me go forward. The gold bounces on cut in Moody's US rating. Important article. While lot of concepts are involved in the article. Point number one, there is a concept of sovereign credit rating. Okay, sovereign credit rating, SCR. What is the meaning of a sovereign credit rating? Essentially, it provides information either in alphabet or alphanumeric. It is either given in alphabet or alphanumeric representation. It provides information regarding the capability of the borrower to repay the loan. In case of individuals, we call this as a CIBIL score. That is also there in today's newspaper. I'll come to that article in just some time. Whereas in case of the governments, we call this as sovereign credit rating. For companies, we simply call it as credit rating. Now, the point is very simple here. There are multiple agencies in the domestic market as well as global market. For example, the global ones focus on the global rating agencies. There is right, S&P, Standard and Poor. There is Moody's. This is one of the major global rating agency. And there is right, also a third rating agency, Fitch. These are the three important global credit rating agencies. Why these are three major important agencies? Around 90% of the total business in the global market is handled by all these three. And all the three are American companies. So far, so good with the story. Let me go forward. Now, these three rating agencies provide credit rating for governments, which is called as sovereign credit rating. Now, in the context of USA, this was there very recently in the newspaper. It was there very recently in the newspaper. What was the article? The Moody's, which is one of the major global credit rating agencies, has downgraded the sovereign credit rating agency of, sovereign credit rating of USA. Is the point clear? I'll repeat this. The Moody's has downgraded means reduced the rating of, right, a country. In this case, it is USA. It was the highest rated. Right? Remember this. It was the highest rated. Now it has been downgraded from AAA to AA1. But what is the logic behind it? Why it has been downgraded and what is the impact of it? Two things. The downgrading has been announced on account of one, in the coming years, the debt of the government of USA is expected to increase. It is already very high. The government of USA is not able to control it. And in the coming days, it is expected to increase. And on the other side, the income sources of the government, income sources of the USA government will be, right, let's say, affected in the coming years because of the policies undertaken by the government in the past. What do you mean by this? Listen to me carefully. The government of USA, when Mr. Donald Trump was the president in the first term, the government of USA announced reduction in the corporate tax rate. CTR is corporate tax rate here. So the government announced a reduction in the corporate tax rate. And you tell me, if there is a reduction in the corporate tax rate, automatically don't you think the income sources of the government, the revenue sources of the government automatically don't you think will go down? The amount of revenue collected would go down because of the reduction in the corporate tax rate. But on the other side, the government has kept on spending more and more money, announcing more schemes for industrialization, for chip production, for right XYZ, etc., etc. So when the government will keep on announcing expenditures, they will continue to borrow more and more, and it will keep on adding to the pile of debt, which is already very high for the government of USA. How much is the debt of the government of USA right now? $36 trillion. Understand? $36 trillion is the debt of the USA government. What is the GDP of India? Around $3.8 trillion. India's GDP is almost a tenth of the debt of government of USA. But again, don't worry about all of these comparisons. Just to make you understand in terms of the sizes, I have given the comparison. So, citing these particular reasons, the sovereign credit rating of USA has been downgraded. And this is not the first. Right now, all the three credit rating agencies, right, have a lower, not the highest sovereign credit rating. Second highest has been given to the USA's market or USA's bonds. So, these are certain important points. And now, as a result of this, what is the outcome? What is the outcome? Outcome is, imagine there is a government is issuing bonds because the credit rating was very, very high. Safety was very, very high. Lot of investors used to have faith, more confidence on the government bonds, purchase more and more bonds. But in this case, what has happened? The downgrading has happened. When the rating is downgraded, risk will increase. With higher risk, now investors are running away from the government bonds, and which is the next best available asset in the market is the gold. It is essentially gold. And that is the precise reason the gold prices again have shot up, again have increased because of, right, let's say the downgrading of sovereign credit rating of USA. And so these are the two very important points. Please make a note of this. Next article, UK, European Union announce a new phase in their relations at summit. What is the important point here? There was Brexit, which was conducted very recently. Initially, voting happened in the last decade, 2016. But effectively, the Brexit was implemented in 2020. Effectively, the implementation took place in 2020. Now, after Brexit took place, and those who are wondering what is a Brexit, Britain exited from the group of European Union. Britain became a different entity. European Union continues to remain as one entity. Now, what has happened after that? What is the reason why these two groups are, or why this country and a group is again coming together to sign agreements? Reason is very simple. After the Brexit took effect, there has been continuous war between Russia as well as Ukraine. The war broke out between Russia and Ukraine, and as a result of this, the trade in the region, the exports, imports in this particular region were affected. And because Russia was the aggressor here, because Russia started the war, basically the European Union as well as the Britain had to side with Ukraine. They opposed, Russia. They imposed sanctions on many of the imports that they were receiving from Russia, which affected their markets. This is the first very important point. Second very important point, Trump factor. Trump factor. And what is the issue of Trump factor? Listen to me carefully. Trump very recently, understand this, very recently after becoming the second president, announced multiple tariffs on multiple trading partners. But the issue is, on one side, Trump is favored to have agreement with UK. It is happening. Negotiations have happened, etc. But on the other side, he doesn't have very good opinion about European Union in terms of the market, in terms of economy, in terms of security, different agreements, etc. Doesn't seem to have a very good opinion about European Union. That's the reason very often he'll keep on criticizing the European Union, imposed multiple tariffs which have been retaliated by European Union. So this kind of a tit for tat, or let's say tariff war, is happening between USA and the European Union. So now that is also said to be one of the reason why European Union is more open to having, let's say, better relations with Britain here. Right? That is the second very important point. Third very important point, one of the reasons why Brexit happened, one of the reasons why Brexit happened was the argument that Britain is not getting benefits by remaining a part of European Union. Right? There is no point for Britain. Lot of jobs are being lost. Right? Economic activity has not been benefited by a larger extent by being part of the European Union, etc. Citing multiple reasons, Britain exited, and after that there was a breakout. That is, there was a pandemic breakout. There was a disruption in the global trade, and as a result of that, even Britain has been affected, right, economically. For example, in multiple quarters in the recent times, inflation rate has been elevated, unemployment rate has been a concern, manufacturing activity has been a concern, the debt of the government has been a concern. So even this, right, understand this, even during this particular situation, looking at all of these particular factors, Britain has extended its hands. Britain has basically extended the coordination to European Union, wants to have trade, wants to have a security relationship with the European Union. So these are some of the reasons which have been cited as the reasons behind the first summit. I hope you understand, the first summit after the Brexit happened between UK and European Union. What are the important areas? Right, four or five very important areas. First one, listen to me carefully. The first one, it will promote youth exchange, or it will basically promote youth mobility. Right? What is the benefit of youth mobility? Let's say you are a graduate in Britain, but this graduation or the certificate is not recognized as a valid certificate to get a job, let's say in the European Union market. That will hinder the mobility of the youth from one region to another region, from one country to another country. Now, this is said to be addressed. Again, the details have not yet been given, but one of the areas that they want to address is make it easier for people to move from one country to another country, that is between Britain and European Union, in search of jobs, in search of better opportunity. Second one, right, the trade. Second one, essentially the trade. The UK's, or let's say Britain here, the Britain's exports which were going to European Union market were facing lot of issues. What kind of issues? Lot of certification mandates were imposed. And because of these certification mandates imposition, the exporters from Britain were finding it very difficult to comply with all of these conditions. If they have to get all the certificates, again the cost will increase. As a result of this, a large number of agriculture exporters or normal exporters from Britain to European Union, they basically prohibited from exporting to European Union. They started selling in other markets. According to one report, the exports from Britain to European Union in the last 4 or 5 years has declined by more than 20%. Now, I hope you understand, the trade would be promoted. And not just this, even the, right, let's say, the activities such as fishing activities, right? The activities such as fishing activity will be promoted now. How so? Between European Union and the Britain, there used to be annual agreements. That is, agreements which are signed annually, right, rediscussed annually or announced annually, regarding allowing the fishers from the European Union to come to the waters surrounding Britain or in the Britain area, conduct fishing activities. According to the agreement signed now, this agreement will be applicable for a duration of 12 years. Instead of allowing this agreement to happen only for 1 year, now this will happen for 12 years. That is, the permission will be provided for fishing activities for a period of 12 years. Fourth important area, that is carbon tax, right, or associated with the carbon tax mechanism. When Britain exited from the European Union, they have their own, or they implemented their own carbon tax mechanism. Now, European Union has announced a CBAM, Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism. What this agreement will provide is the carbon tax mechanism as well as carbon border adjustment mechanism will be unified. Unified in the sense the differences will be merged. There will be synchronization in the system. And because there is a synchronization in both of these, the exports from Britain, which will go to, let's say, European Union, now will not be suffering because of the CBA. Will not be right. Will not be having the issue of CBA. And the fifth one, the security area. A security deal also has been signed between both of these. And as a result of this, the transfer of information, the security related information, the transfer between both of these will happen much more effectively. So these are the five very important areas of UK European Union summit or UK EU trade deal which has been signed, which was announced by the government yesterday. Now, next article, LibTech report. LibTech report on Manrega. Now, two very important points to observe. Point number one, this is not a new report, or let's say this is not a novel concept of publishing a report on Manrega. LibTech very often will keep on publishing reports on Manrega. But what are the points that you need to observe? The latest LibTech report says the number of enrollments, the number of households enrolled under the Manrega have increased. But the number of houses which are getting 100 days of employment is very, very small. According to the report which has been published now, the number of, let's say the houses which have been enrolled have increased. The number right now stands at around 14.98 crore. 14.98 crore. Under Manrega, we provide at least 100 days of wage related employment opportunities for the workers here. Right, so the number of households which are enrolled have increased. But how much of the households are getting actually 100 days of work under Manrega? It is just around 7%. It is just around 7%. Now, those who will ask me, sir, why? What is happening? Why the enrollments are higher, but the number of houses getting 100 days of work or wage opportunities is lesser? Why wage employment or person days under Manrega has gone down? The reason which has been cited by the report is one, sufficient funds are not being allocated. Sufficient funds for the implementation of Manrega are not being allocated by the government. For example, in this year's budget, that is for the financial year 26, the government of India has allocated funds to the tune of 86,000 crore rupees. What was the allocation last year? Same. This year, same. So on one side, there is a higher demand for the Manrega wage-related opportunities, but the government of India's allocation of funds for Manrega has remained same. In fact, many experts argue this should have been much, much higher. And second one, in many instances, the report says there is a delay in providing the wages to the workers. There is a delay in providing wages to the workers. So these two reasons have been cited as the reasons why the number of person days have lowered under Manrega, why only 7% of the households get 100 days of wage opportunities under the scheme. Okay, next article, right? Small articles now. Farmer loans and CIBIL score. What is the important point here? Point number one, CIBIL score stands for Central Bureau of I'm sorry, not Central Bureau, the Credit Information Bureau of India Limited, not CBI, CIBIL. I was giving you the expansion of CBI. CIBIL stands for Credit Information Bureau India Limited. What it essentially does is it will provide you the credit rating in the form of a number. Credit rating for individuals. As simple as this. It will provide a credit rating for individuals, right? Such as you, such as me. If we want to take a loan from a bank, the bank will ask me what is my CIBIL score. And the CIBIL score generally is provided in the range of 300 to 900. Higher the number, if your CIBIL score is higher, more credit worthy you are. And if you are more credit worthy, the bank will be more open to provide loans to you. That is one of the very important parameters that the banks will look at when the loans have to be disbursed. Loans have to be given to the borrowers. And that is essentially the CIBIL score. But what is given in the article? The Chief Minister of Maharashtra has given a warning to multiple banks. The warning is associated with the banks are demanding a CIBIL score for farmers. The banks are demanding, right? The banks are demanding the CIBIL score, right, from the farmers. And based on that, the banks are basically rejecting the loan applications, are denying the loans which have to be given to farmers. So just to give you a perspective, correct perspective here, it is not the first time that the banks have been caught in this kind of an issue. Not the first time in case of farmers, not the first time where they're demanding a CIBIL score from the borrowers as well. What do you mean by that? There are multiple types of loans which are given to different borrowers. For example, there can be a student loan as well. But a couple of years ago, there was an issue where Kerala High Court issued an order where it was seen that a particular bank is demanding CIBIL score from a student. The High Court mentioned, how can a student have a CIBIL score? The student is supposed to get education, get a graduation, then work, then take a loan in the process, then repay the loan, will have a CIBIL score. But you're asking a CIBIL score from a student. Right? So there was an order which was issued by the High Court. In this case, the Chief Minister of the state of Maharashtra has asked the banks, has basically directed the banks not to ask a CIBIL score from the farmers and issue the loans even if the farmers do not have CIBIL score. More importantly, what does RBI guideline say? RBI guideline doesn't mandate a CIBIL score for a farmer. Done? So these are certain points. Next, right, the last article, just factual information. The Supreme Court of India has issued a judgment where it is saying the High Court judges shall be given pension under the concept of one rank, one pension. One rank, one pension. Earlier it was there in the discussion. Under one rank, one pension, if you retire at a particular level, that is, if you have a certain position, retire at this particular level, without looking at, right, let's say when you have joined, etc., same amount of pension shall be given to all the officers. The Supreme Court of India has issued an order now. Under this, the High Court judges shall be covered under one rank, one pension. So this is just an update. So these are the different articles I wanted to cover. This is the QR code. Join the Telegram channel, right? The PPT will be uploaded in the Telegram channel. Now the key answers. 106 question number. Which of the following are likely outcomes of falling crude oil prices? Inflow of remittances in India would reduce. Yes, it has been seen very recently also. Exports would remain unaffected. No way. Exports and imports would be affected. The amount of tax collected by the government would reduce. Yes. The two outcomes are likely. Right option for question number 106 is option B. 107. Which of the following are examples of composite index? Panchayat Advancement Index? Yes. Human Development Index? Yes. Literacy rate? No. It is a single indicator. It's not a composite index. Right option is option B. MCQ 108. Consider the following statements regarding Overseas Citizenship of India scheme. This was introduced by amending Citizenship Act of 1955. Yes. There are no sections under the Act to cancel OCI issued. No. Section 7. These card holders have the right to vote in India. Incorrect. Right option is A. Only one of the three statements is correct. So, if you like this initiative, if you have got benefited from this initiative, do hit the like button. If you are yet to join our YouTube channel, kindly do it right now. See you tomorrow, sharp at 10 a.m. Take care. Have a great day.